Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope we've all had a chance to recaffeinate and get a little bit of refreshment here over lunch. Really excited to tee up this discussion, a bit of a deeper dive into the world of quantum information science and technology, which of course is one of our major themes today of the Qubits, semiconductors and molecules. So, quantum science has and continues to transform our collective understanding of how reality exists, the fundamental nature of reality, leading to groundbreaking advances in technology that have broad-based applications in a wide range of areas. And we have a phenomenal panel here covering a lot of ground that will, I think, give us a chance to get a sense of where the field is and where it's going and where some of the near, medium, and long-term implications are in the nascent but rapidly growing field of QIST. So I'd like to start just by kind of quickly reintroducing our panelists to my right, actually, no, to my left here. So unfortunately, we did have one of our panelists we lost to illness. Dr. Preeti Chalsani was not able to join us today. But to my left, I have Ms. Rima Owaid, who's the Senior Commercialization Executive for the Office of Technology Transitions at the U.S. Department of Energy. To her left, I have Professor Yong Chen, who's the Director of the Purdue University Quantum Science Engineering Institute and the Carl Lark Horowitz Professor of Physics and Astronomy, as well as a Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering. To his left, I have Dr. Jay Gambetta, an IBM Fellow and Vice President of IBM Quantum. And finally, certainly last but not least, Professor Brian DeMarco, who's a Professor and Director of the Illinois Quantum Information Science and Technology Institute at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So welcome, all of you. We'll go ahead and dive in here, and I'm going to ask the first question of Dr. Gambetta, who, for those of you in the room, or most of you, I'm assuming, are familiar with Gordon Moore's famous law. Dr. Gambetta has a law named after him as well, Gambetta's law, which I think is a good analog for Moore's law in the quantum realm. So, Jay, could you tell us what is quantum and what are the most viable near-term use cases of quantum science and applications?
Thank you for asking the question. I'm not a proponent of that law, but anyway, I'll accept it. So what is quantum computing? I often think of it as it's the first time in the history of computing that it's branched. It's a different set of fundamental math that is getting done. I know lots of people like to give analogies like it does everything at once and things like that. I think it's more profound. I think of quantum computing as giving me access to math that allows me to calculate. In physics, we call them good quantum numbers or things like this, but essentially correlations. And if I can use those in some way, then I get this primitive that allows me to do things that would have cost a ridiculous amount of time on classical computing. And so I often get asked, what is the first application of quantum computing? I think answering the question of what actually it means to compute is probably the first answer of quantum computing, because it's the first time ever it's actually changed the game. Of course, as we go forward, there's many applications that we know are just really, really hard in the classical space, simulating materials, some forms of searching large databases, risk-type problems, and things like this. This is why lots of commercial companies are interested. And even though it throws a lot of people into getting confused of what it means or what it doesn't, I'm personally interested in the interface of AI and quantum. And what does this new math allow for for AI if I exploit a quantum computer? And there are some results out there that they're still toy problems, but they look really intriguing.
Very good. Thank you, Jay. The near and medium term applications, that I'm familiar with, there's enormous implications for diagnostic medicine. That seems to be something that's come up with some frequency. Brian, can you elaborate a little bit on kind of what you're seeing from your vantage point, particularly with one of the most recently announced use cases, this huge new development on the south side of Chicago, the PsiQuantum hub. Tell us a little bit about kind of how that's evolving and what the vision is for that site as a proving ground.
Oh, sure. So that's the Illinois Quantum and Microelectronics Park. And my colleague, Harley Johnson, will talk about this, I think, shortly. So that's a development on the south side of Chicago. There's a $500 million investment that was appropriated in fiscal year 25 to support the development of basically a tech park for quantum companies in the quantum supply chain. So the idea is this will be a vibrant ecosystem. There'll be infrastructure there you can't find anywhere else, a massive cryo plant that will provide cryogenics at a scale that we haven't seen in quantum computing yet. There's an anchor tenant, PsiQuantum, that has a photonic-based approach. That means they use light for quantum computing. And they want to build a large-scale, utility-scale quantum computer there. Another element of this is a DARPA program. So there's a Illinois DARPA Quantum Proving Ground, and really that's a program which is part of their quantum benchmarking initiative, which was recently announced, to prove an engineering pathway towards utility scale quantum computing. Or what they mean by utility scale is that the quantum computer is worth more than it costs to make and costs to operate. So that's DARPA's mission, and that program will actually start in February of this year. And we hope to open the doors on the park in about 24 months. I think the whole reason this park is going to work and succeed is because it's a whole of Illinois effort, and it involves our friends and neighbors in the surrounding Midwest, where we're really leveraging the excellence of the research universities and the national labs to make this possible. So you hear a lot more about that, and I think that park is not just for quantum computing. It will support all kinds of quantum technologies, including quantum sensing, and quantum sensors are here now. Companies have succeeded in making quantum sensors for navigation that allow for navigation in a GPS-denied environment. And so I think you'll start to see more and more of that type of thing rolling out.
Excellent. So, continuing in that vein, thinking about some of the place-based investments that we're seeing in the Chicago metro area, what are some of the key factors that you perceive as the kind of the competitive advantages that contribute to this burgeoning partnership between Indiana and Illinois, the institutions that are members of the Chicago Quantum Exchange and the private sector? Tell us a little bit about how that ecosystem has emerged, and also who and where are the main competitors for this burgeoning ecosystem?
Sure. So let me continue on this train of thought. So part of the reason I think we're so well positioned to be really the sort of quantum valley or Silicon Quantum Valley, beyond Silicon Quantum Valley, is really all the people and the institutions that we have, right? So we have these great research universities in Indiana, in Illinois, 2 national labs, the vision of visionaries, right? So our Governor Pritzker is visionary in his investments in creating facilities and infrastructure that can be leveraged by companies and researchers. We also have incredible other people with incredible vision, like Quantum Corridor, who's here today, who are creating a quantum-based network around Indiana and Illinois. The vision of the people was President Zimmer, who helped start the Chicago Quantum Exchange, which is this ecosystem that now stretches from Wisconsin through Illinois and into Indiana, with Purdue as a new member. So I think it's really all these assets, this vision, the investments by the universities and something like IQuest, but also the Purdue Center, where the university is invested in hiring really talented young scientists who are really the future in building this. So it's really bringing this all together and creating a kind of alignment, which I think positions us well. There are competitors. There are competitors in the West, in Colorado. There's competitors on the West Coast, competitors in the East Coast. I'm not too worried about all of that. I think we have something really special here, and I expect great things in the next few years.
That's great. And if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but roughly 40% of the federal funding for QIST has landed in this ecosystem over the past several years. Is that more or less?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's been really excellent. So I think that number is hard to compute. But what I'd say is, if you just look at the success, there are 4 of the NQI Act centers in Illinois. There's a Silicon Crossroads, so one of a small number of DoD microelectronics commons led by ARI here in Indiana. So sort of capture. I think what's impressive is it captures these very large scale programs that were created by federal acts, is kind of unprecedented compared to the rest of the U.S.
Sure. Well, and pivoting a little bit to Indiana, Dr. Chen, tell us a little bit about the work that's going on here at Purdue and how that ties into the ongoing collaboration with other CQE institutions.
Hello. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. And first of all, since I'm the local person, I thank you and welcome you all, those from nearby or afar, that spent a little bit of your wave function today here and discussing this. It's very nice. Thank you. And yes, as you pointed out, and also some example were mentioned earlier this morning, we value partnership extremely strongly. And for example, of course, we're very excited to be part of Shared Quantum Exchange. Looking forward to the many of the activity programs there. But in the last several years, we formed several important partnerships. For example, looking a bit toward the south, we have this really nice partnership with the Oak Ridge National Lab and other partners together in collaboration also with the Fermi Lab, Los Alamos, and Microsoft, and several other institutions. We launched this Quantum Science Center, one of 5 Department of Energy National Quantum Information Science Research Center, which is by so far the largest US government investment in quantum science technology. That's been a really strong program on research, on workforce, and also engagement with industry. And Purdue is the largest university partner in that program. Every year we host a summer school in collaboration with Oak Ridge and QSC here at Purdue, attracting 100 students. That's been really going very well. Looking a little more to the east, 2 years ago we launched Midwest Quantum Collaborative with the University of Michigan and Michigan State University and some other partners. And that's been also engaging several industry partners such as Toyota and other regional industries. That's an interesting program. We are part of a network with the Arizona State Quantum Collaborative with the IBM. I mean, a lot is about better using these quantum resource, and that has played a role, for example, supporting some of our faculties, even startup effort using some of the quantum resource. And so these are some examples of the partnership. I think we're partnering broadly, widely, strategically, but we believe in construct interference entanglement, that we can do more. So really looking forward to working with many colleagues here to continue those partnerships, expand them further.
Excellent. We were talking beforehand in our briefing session, there are plenty of opportunities for puns in the quantum space, entanglement, making a quantum leap in computing. Rima, I want to put you on the spot a little bit here. So there are obviously some really exciting things happening both in Indiana and in Illinois through all of these institutions and private sector partners. What do you see from your vantage point, particularly around commercialization, as the biggest hurdles to advancing quantum science both regionally and nationally?
Thank you for that question. I think Chris Day this morning kind of set the stage a little bit for this question, because he talked a little bit about how we have to really dig deep and make sure that our young kids don't have the creativity sucked out of them, so that they lose that genius, right? And it's a paradigm shift in terms of how we're willing to think outside the box. We need not be afraid to ask those difficult questions or the silly questions. We have to be willing to challenge dogma. We need to be willing to almost commit heresy in science and in technology to challenge the boundaries of what can be done. And so coming in at it from the business perspective, we have to keep asking why. Can we do this? Can we do that? Why? And really challenge what is possible, because we need to have space to tinker, and we need to have space to fail, but then recover quickly. And we're reaching a point, I think, where we need a feedback loop, where both commercializing the technology and doing the fundamental science need to work together. These things are now not a handoff. It's a circular process. It's a virtuous cycle. We get to inform one another, and we need to be able to ask whether we can do crazy things. It's been a long time since we've done crazy things like gone to the moon, right? And now we're trying to do that again, but we need to ask, can I use quantum sensing to see through walls? Yeah, you probably can. Can I use quantum sensing to see, deep inside of a satellite to decide whether, or an asteroid, to decide whether or not I want to mine it someday? that is possible. We need to think about resources, not just here on Earth, but also outside of Earth. And these are the types of things that quantum technologies are going to enable us to do. They're going to broaden the horizon of what is possible, where we can go. So, Jay talked a little bit about quantum computing. There's so many incredible things that we're going to be able to do when we have a fault-tolerant quantum computer, but there are some things we could tinker with today with these noisy intermediate scale quantum computers if we find the right use cases. That's a different mind shift, right? We don't have to wait for the perfect machine to start tinkering, to start doing things. We have examples in the energy sector because we make decisions managing our grid that require heuristics. We don't need a precise answer. We need a probability range. Maybe noisy intermediate scale quantum computers can help with that. This is where we're tinkering. Novel idea, right? It's just we have to be willing to keep probing and asking silly questions as well as the hard questions, doing the basic science research as well as the applied research, as well as trying to do technology transfer. And it's a feedback loop. And that's the way we need to be thinking about this from this point forward, I think.
I like the tie-in to the moonshot. It seems that very much the spirit of the Chips and Science Act is to sort of reignite that kind of vision in our national scientific industrial complex, and it seems like this is one of those frontiers of technology where we're seeing that probably more in a pronounced way than many other areas. So you mentioned the paradigm shift that's required with regard to educating the future workforce to be quantum ready. I'm going to sort of put this to both Dr. Chen and Brian first. What do you see as the needs of the workforce in the future for emerging occupations that we may not know exactly yet what those requirements will look like, but we know that it's going to require significant maybe changes in our thinking, in how we prepare our graduates?
Okay,
You can
I
fight for it.
Sure, I'll start, and then I'll pass it over to Jan. All right, so one thing I'll say is that I think, looking forward in education, I think, yes, there's going to be some things that are different about quantum, but we still need a lot of talented scientists and engineers. So we need universities like Purdue and like the University of Illinois that produce a lot of talented scientists and engineers. This is just going to be important no matter what. But I think there's a lot of innovation to be done. Places like the University of Chicago have created a quantum-focused degree, and I think that would be important. It's got kind of that moonshot spirit to it to attract like people who may go find other things to do to quantum. I think we also have to find ways to uncover more talent. So we heard this earlier today, really attracting the widest range of people, because who knows who's going to solve the problem? That really makes it all work. So how do we make it very accessible to people and people not afraid to actually just dive in and think that they can do it? That's one of the biggest things when I work with students in classes, even in tertiary classes. Sometimes they just don't think that they can solve the problem. Like, no, you can solve the problem, you can do it, right? So I think we need to make it accessible, bring quantum computing out to more people at a younger age in quantum technology so they see and they can do it. And then I think there is plenty of innovation to be had in the educational workspace. There's also UIUC partnered with the University of Chicago to make a certificate degree, which is really for workers who want to reskill, who have a background in IT or other areas and are interested in getting into an area like quantum networking. And we did that in partnership with a company, actually, that helped to co-design the curriculum. So I think there's a lot to do there.
Excellent. Rima, you had a thought just now.
I was going to wait till after, but I can jump in.
It's
Thank
fresh
you.
in mind. Go for it.
So the other thing that I kind of building on the theme about commercializing the technology and combining that with workforce, there's this idea that the workforce for quantum is all going to be PhDs, and that's not true, right? We know that because I work closely with quantum technology companies, and they're telling me they need technicians, they need people that can weld, they need people that can actually work in a factory type setting but very skilled job, right? And so these are technical jobs. They're degrees or their technical skills, their certificates potentially. They learn on the job in some cases. That's what these companies are doing today. And so we do need PhDs, but I think something that gets lost in the conversation and the narrative today that I think would help our cause is to be able to broaden that this creates all kinds of jobs. It creates technical jobs as well as, you know, blue collar and white collar skill jobs. And we're seeing that there's opportunities for us to, well, I'll save that for another question. Another one.
I'll pivot over to you, Professor Chen.
Sure, thank you. So I think among the largest STEM strong university with some of the biggest science engineering schools, university like UIU St. Purdue, we have special responsibility as well opportunity to attack this workforce issue. And very often companies come to us. For example, I mentioned earlier, Purdue leads the Center for Quantum Technology, which is a first actually NSF-funded industry university cooperative research center in collaboration with IU Notre Dame, but involving a consortium of more than 10 companies. By the way, we welcome more companies to come to us in this club. That's one of the top issue companies come to telling us all the time. They need the right people, right? They shortage of workforce. But also, I definitely resonate with it. It's also the quantum education is not just about PhDs, not just about physics students. You need to broaden to many disciplines, physics, chemistry, a lot of science disciplines, engineering disciplines, or even beyond, medical school, or even business school. There's a real interest here growing in perhaps learning quantum optimization for the future, so on and so forth. And also, pre-college, of course, we're a university, but I think we are the leading edge, right? There was a message I mentioned this morning, the kids are scared of STEM, not just say quantum, even STEM. And that's a bit unfortunate. I mean, we value having our kids learning all kinds of sports, learning a bit basketball, soccer, even though being professional player is very challenging. But everybody can learn something, enjoy, and that's really good for their life. And why not STEM? Being professional mathematician is probably challenging, but if we all can enjoy learning a bit of math, quantum physics, we do have program also to make, for example, to make it a bit more broader, not necessarily starting with Schrodinger equation, but starting with a 2x2 matrix, stuff like that. But so our students, even kids, enjoy learning about it. Maybe have some club. We have a quantum game club here at Purdue. Even have a competition, maybe programming on your IBM Q. I think that can make a lot of interesting impact. And we also want to do this in collaboration with the industry also in our, say, back to our CQT, that we work together, see what kind of workforce they want and how we can work together on this issue.
You know, he touches on another good point, and just going back to the conversation about kids, you know, it is, I'm going to share a personal story. I have a 10-year-old daughter who came to me on, when she was like 7 or I think, or 6, and said, Mom, I hate math. And I was like, what? I work on quantum computing, you can't hate math. So, you know, it was interesting, and I thought about, okay, well, how are they approaching math? And my mom, who's someone who's very difficult to, she doesn't like reading, but somehow excelled in mathematics and science and chemistry. And so I asked her, you know, what made it work for you? And she told me about how they taught math in Poland, where she's from. And I thought, okay, it's a very different approach than the way we teach mathematics here in the States. It's more about pattern recognition. It's more logic-based. It's a completely different approach. And so I then signed my daughter up for the Russian School of Mathematics, which is basically the same kind of math that my mom learned in Poland. And so now she's in the gifted math program, you know, 10 years old. Like, it just, sea change, 1 year, totally changed. And so it just goes to show that that mindset can change, but we do need to approach math and science in a different way, where it's not just about, you know, memorization and punching the numbers. We've got calculators for that. It's about understanding patterns. It's about identifying order in the midst of chaos, right? And that's what we're trying to do now as adults. And so maintaining that, you know, in our children is also important, but obviously, you know, it's another way of educating children that I think needs to start young, and obviously even after they're 10 years old, or past 6, past 7, those critical ages where they've made that, so they've identified themselves as one type of person, you can still shift. There's still room for growth and change. And if that's true, I think of a kid, I don't see those of us who are adults can't achieve that, knowing that our brains are so malleable until we die. So.
Well said. There's, I think we've learned enough about neuroplasticity at this point to know that very rarely is someone sort of fixed in their interests, their skills profile, et cetera. I want to change gears just a little bit. One of the challenges that I think our national effort to re-engage industrial policy in a way that we haven't, perhaps, since the space race, has been the push to accelerate the commercialization timeline. We know that much basic research that happens can take decades to have market implications and commercial potential. Jay, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the role that your work at IBM, the role of partnerships between academic institutions, the private sector, the public sector, that kind of three-legged stool, how you see that as advancing the work.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it even touches on the workforce. So we've been building quantum computers probably one of the longest and of any company doing it. Today we have 12 online, actually. I think it's closer to 20. You have to go see whatever the number is. And people have been running it. We decided in 2016, I actually was at a government grant, and a theorist came up to me and said, "Can you run my latest experiment?" And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why can't I put the quantum computer on a cloud and allow you to run it? And so in 2016, we set out to put a quantum computer on the cloud, and then I wrote to the theorist that asked me if I could run his latest experiment. You go run it. Since then, there's been over 3 trillion circuit executions on our machines, something like 3,000 papers. And so we decided that if we're going to build a technology, we're not going to build it in isolation. And so the next year, we decided that we would make the software for quantum computing open source. And I'm proud of the fact that for the open source project that we started, 75% of the contributors to that open source program are not from IBM. Most of I go many talks, and a student will go, "Look at my latest result, it's a better way of writing a circuit. I've put it in this Qiskit." And so as we continue to see this grow, we see the community adding on the open source, we see the usage. And so we decided from day one that it will be a partnership. We started creating education content, learning material. We give 10 minutes of the systems free for people to use, and we're seeing, I think, something like 9 million people that have touched our content since we put it online. And basically, though, as we go forward, we're partnering with many different institutes because I don't see us as the builders of the technology as the best at educating. When quantum wasn't a word, we had to get it started. Now it's a word. I think the universities will do a much better job at educating it. And some of the initiatives that we've partnered with that even has Illinois at the University of Chicago is between Japan, so University of Tokyo, Keio University in Japan, Seoul National University in Korea, and Yonsei University and the University of Chicago. We've committed over the next 10 years, we want to see 40,000 students learning these type of machines. So for me, to build a technology and to make it useful, it can't happen without partnerships. So that's just on the usage side. I also think the universities have the role, like many of our partners at universities, we sponsor research programs with many people at UIC as well. I think it's 5 or so. I forget the exact number.
I think 8.
Oh, 8, thank
Yep.
you. 5 I know in my head, so I'll have to check what those other 3 are.
For a physicist, 5
Equals
it's the
8.
same number. Yep.
But like, what they're doing is they're doing high risk, high reward type experiments. I in the industry lab, I'm about trying to take those high risk, high reward and make them more stable, reliable, yield. I started off as a physicist. I don't know what I am anymore. But like, I see this as continuing, and I think we heard at the start of the day, if we're going to build a technology that has national defense implications, it cannot be done without the US government as part of it, let alone the science that the DOE sponsors, just understanding the applications. So the NIST standards in 2016, we went out of our way to 3 of those 4 algorithms are from IBM scientists because we want to partner on actually making sure this technology is safe. So I think it is the government, the university, and industry. I'm proud of everything we've done. I think there's a lot to go, but if you want to go start learning about these machines, doing the discovery that's needed, they're there now.
I want to focus on one of the things you just mentioned about providing access that isn't place-bound. Brian, you mentioned earlier this effort that's being developed by the Quantum Corridor to connect a lot of these nodes for to create a sort of special purpose fiber infrastructure that links together a lot of these major R&D and commercialization centers. Can you speak a little bit more to, does that position this Indiana-Illinois corridor with perhaps a sustained competitive advantage for the foreseeable future?
Yes, thanks for the question. I think it does, for a few reasons. I'm trying to think about how to answer this without getting too in the weeds. There are some really cool potential applications for quantum computers that are that happen when you have quantum computers that are connected by a quantum network. These are things like blind quantum computing, where someone may have and this is actually quite important, right? I mean, privacy and security of information and people's information. As someone whose tax identity was stolen, this was very close to my heart, because you have to file paper taxes when that happens to you, which is like awful. How do we secure our data? So blind quantum computing is a way to do that, where parties can send questions to a database, and neither party that holds a database or it sends a question knows anything about the other party. So there are applications like that where you want a quantum network to connect nodes together. And so that infrastructure, building that infrastructure that Quantum Corridor and others are building, is quite important to that. The other thing that we're all starting to understand is that how do you get to a large-scale quantum computer? It may be the same way we do supercomputing now, where a supercomputer is really a lot of computers networked together. And so to get to a large-scale quantum computer may require this kind of networking of many computers. And each may have a very large site required to support it, and so you may actually need some distance in that network to make that work. So I think that infrastructure is useful for things we kind of know now, and one of the great things about this area too is we're learning as we go, and so there'll be applications we don't know yet where I bet that fiber infrastructure will be useful.
That makes a lot of sense. And from what I understand, the particular specifications for some of the hardware require a significant amount of energy and cooling, and not something that a typical startup venture can just put up with their own seed capital. And to provide access to that on a connected network, I could see being a significant value proposition. Yeah. So this one, I think, Rima, I'm going to ask you to speak to some of the adjacent and tangential industries that could benefit and expand or develop around a quantum ecosystem.
Thanks for the question. Obviously, because I work for the Department of Energy, I would think energy is an industry that would benefit from quantum technologies, and it's really a no-brainer, quite frankly. Like I mentioned to you earlier, that this NIST computers might be able to provide algorithms that are useful for managing the grid, to do things called contingency analysis, which depend on heuristics. Optimization is another great one, and we can use that in energy and transportation and all kinds of sectors. Anywhere you need to deal with logistics. It's that famous traveling salesman problem. How do we optimize for that? And that kind of mathematics can be applied in so many different areas. Even in the energy sector, we could use optimization using quantum computing to look at how to optimize the grid and allow it to be able to optimize renewables on our system. One of my favorite use cases that we're digging into is how we can use electric vehicles. So now we're pulling in transportation, who are being powered by the grid. Well, the grid sometimes is running on fossil fuels. Once in some parts of the country, it could be close to 95% renewables during certain times of the day. What if we charged our vehicles during that time, right, with renewables, and then discharged them in the evening between 5 and 9 p.m. to offset peaker plants? That's an optimization problem, and a lot of that happens at the grid edge, right? And that requires a significant amount of computing capability. And so, talking to experts, we're realizing, classical computing might, reach its limits here, trying to deal with all the types of devices that interact with the grid. So now you're talking about thermostats, hot water heaters, all these things that could become devices and assets for the grid that could be optimized in terms of, how they're being utilized or what they're being powered by. So the energy sector, I think, is just flooded with ideas. We're thinking about them every day. But then, there are these parallels and connections with other industries because there's interdependencies, and that's just computing. Now, don't get me started on quantum sensing. I think that one's really cool because it's here. We have it. GPS communications. A lot of our GPS today is very vulnerable. GPS is vulnerable, not a lot. It is. It's right. It's not hard to spoof jam GPS. But what if we had quantum sensors terrestrially? What if we built a terrestrial network? And there are use cases that we're looking at where it might actually become feasible. There might be a market opportunity to do that. And so, and in space, what's interesting is GPS points down, so it serves Earth. We don't have GPS for space, which makes it so we could, there's an opportunity for us to have quantum sensing, advanced quantum sensors or quantum clocks in space for space, and then also have sensors on Earth for Earth, and then tie them together. That would create a much more resilient, redundant system. And the energy sector depends on GPS. So our energy sector is at risk. It's vulnerable to jamming and spoofing as well. So anyway, there's energy, telecom, transportation, logistics. The more you can think about it, the more ideas we could come up with. And some of them are not long-term. I'm talking about something that we can do in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years. And some of this is here today. And security is a whole nother one. So, so I'll leave it at that.
I'll segue from that. So in what you just said, unpacking that, I hear a lot of implications for national security, the security of the grid, security of GPS systems that all of us rely on every day, minute-to-minute basis. My wife knows exactly where I am at all times, thanks to Find My iPhone. Let's take the plane to a slightly higher altitude. Dr. Chen, let's start with you. When you look at the kind of near to medium term development timeline of quantum science, what do you see as some of the geopolitical implications with work that's happening in other parts of the world? Where is the ecosystem here vis-a-vis other hubs, whether that's in PRC or other hotbeds of activity in other parts of the world?
Great question. It's complex. In quantum science, we'll talk about complex quantum, but this issue, also related issue, is complex and also evolving. The situation today is different from a year ago, and we don't know what will happen next 2 years. So sometimes it creates uncertainty, anxiety, and also but I want to also resonate a sort of the optimistic tone that Brian sounded. But ultimately we feel optimistic to the future. And also at the university, I think, of course, we need to be aware of the issues today, but ultimately we like to look very future, right? We want to look for the good for humanity for not just the next 10 years, but hopefully 100 years into the future. So of course, we need to be aware of a lot of challenges. I mean, workforce is one example, right? How do we make sure we are attractive to the best talents widely to work, come here, stay here, work for us, instead of go to the competitors, for example. And in the research side, dealing with the industry, government, international partners, of course, some of the quantum is very, it can be considered towards critical technology. There may be a tendency to put naturally restrictions. A lot of quantum research is still basic on research. And we cannot close everything. They need to be balanced to stay competitive, so we can access to the widely the information and talents. And that balance is also evolving. So, but I think this needs a coordinated conversation between researchers, universities, industry, government, to find the best strategy that is actually back to the central theme, to make us more competitive internationally, not less competitive, to really leverage the best resource widely. And back to even I think the question started from discussion, some near-term applications, and certainly we talk about there's near-term technology beyond quantum computing. Of course, it's very important, exciting, and quantum sensing. Some of that already reality. It's part of a lot of quantum photonics, supporting technology, photon technology, making, single photon sources, detectors, not just for quantum communication or networking. Some of that is already somewhat commercial, but supporting the broad range of the quantum science research, or even non-quantum research can benefit from these kind of photonic technology. Back to healthcare, an example. Of course, we talk about simulating or design drugs, maybe one of the near-term application for the quantum computing, but also having a chip. Back to the synergy between molecule, chip, and quantum. We have research here at Purdue, for example, to putting, many different kind of drugs on cancer cells. I learned this not too long ago that half of the patients were not helped by the chemotherapy. Is actually potentially even killed by it because everybody's cell may respond differently to the drug. So there's a very critical need for large throughput testing. So there's this so-called biochip, bio-CD emerging, and put the different drugs. And some of these based on very sensitive optical measurement, even potentially quantum sensing technology, can detect a change of the molecular drug down to the picometer level, even more. And that creates a lot of potential. And this is on a increase on the CMOS compatible type of chip. So there's a lot of opportunity here, working with the pharmaceutical drug industry, healthcare, to really advance these measurement. Quantum provides some of the most sensitive way to measurement. I think it's a wide range of applications. Some involving, security domain. Some involving, human health. Of course, you need to worry about privacy and all that. But it's a very wide-ranging. Different industry have different issues and challenges that we have to kind of look at in the holistic picture.
I'm struck hearing all of you talk about different use cases, implications, and different industries, and thinking earlier in the day, President Chang mentioned the kind of overperformance of this region in terms of its securing 3 federally designated hubs in different areas: energy, biotechnology, quantum information science, microelectronics. It does seem like there's connective tissue between all of these clusters that the quantum space seems to play a unique role in creating synergy between sectors. So we're wrapping up here in our last minute. I want to give each of you about 10 seconds to give your best crystal ball forecast. Earlier today, we heard somewhere between 5 and 100 years when the emergence of a scalable commercial application of quantum computing. I'll put you all on the spot. What do you think? Somewhere between 5 and 100. Give me your best guess, Brian.
Somewhere between 5 and 100.
Oh, come on.
That's all you get out of me.
Yeah, all right.
I already have a roadmap that says when we have our machines today, which already people are using that are beyond what people can simulate. By 2029, we're going to have error correction working. By 2033, I want to get it up to 1 billion operations. The hard question is actually not the hardware. When are we going to have the algorithms and the quantum algorithm research to do it? And honestly, we need way more computer scientists getting into this field and doing algorithm research, and that's what gives me the error bar, not the technology.
And that's why we have Gambetta's law.
You know, I like to quote Feynman, by the way, one of the pioneers of the quantum computing idea, said one of the most important piece of human knowledge, if we allow to pass one piece of the knowledge to future generation, that is the world is made of atoms. Of course, the molecules, all the materials, all made of atoms. And one of the most exciting thing I like to, and hopefully see the quantum technology help us bring is it will allow us to create new matter, new materials, new molecules that we don't have name for today, and enable technology that we don't have name for today. I think that will happen within my lifetime. So that's my hope.
That's good. Within my lifetime, that's good. Some specificity.
Drug
Yeah.
will extend my life too. So.
And finally, Rima.
So Feynman also, I have this picture I used to use of my PowerPoints with Feynman's goofy face with this like mischievous smile, basically telling you nature's really hard, but quantum computing is even harder. But you have to, think outside the box, basically. I'm paraphrasing in order to really to make it work. And so, at the end, I agree with Jay. It's the algorithms matter here, right? We've alluded to the fact that there's an opportunity to tinker, and that's where algorithm development really needs to start happening. And we're actually exploring whether we can use AI to help us develop quantum algorithms. Novel idea, right? But yes, we have a workshop coming up next month where we're looking into these things. And quantum sensing's here. The question is, can we improve SWaP-C such that we can apply it to more use cases? And then, quantum secure communications, we're looking at entanglement, and I think that's probably, we have quantum key distribution, that's here today. So, there's stuff we can do today. Let's not forget that.
That's good. So we have today, within lifetime, specific timeline, and also between 5 and 100 years. So somewhere in there, we're going to see some very exciting things, and we already are. So I want to thank all of you again for taking the time to unpack what I think is certainly one of the most thrilling frontiers of science and technology in my lifetime, and probably everyone in this room. So thank you again.